When I was about 9 years old, my father came into my bed, and I don't know how graphic I can be here about what happened, but I'm just going to say it. And you can beep if you want. But I was literally face beat for the next 3 years in my bed late at night, and it caused severe dissociation and many, many, many problems for me. And I had occluded memory. I just had to block it out. And every time I'd hear his footsteps on the stairs coming to my bedroom, I would just see myself going out the window. I would just leave my body and I was gone. That's how I survived it. Yeah, this was not a fun childhood. And then I don't see myself as a victim because living as a victim is a dead end. There's no happy ending. We've all been victimized. Our task is to heal that and take back our power and stop giving it away to those people who hurt us. Because as long as we go around the world going, he hurt me and I'm still hurting because he hurt me, we're giving away our power to them. We're staying stuck in that reality. You have to go through the pain. You have to feel it. You have to express it and feel it. Be done with it. But then take back your power.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about helping men who were sexually abused as children. I'm honored to welcome Merle Yost. Merle is an EMDR certified psychotherapist, author, and teacher. You can reach Merle at his website, unspokenboundaries.com, and I'll include a link in the show notes. Welcome, Merle. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm delighted to be here.
I am so grateful because what you're talking about is so important. And many people realize that little girls can be molested, but there are a lot of people who don't realize that it also happens to little boys and how that can affect them. And a lot of little boys who grew up, that is a source of shame, and they don't want to tell anybody. And so those who have experienced it don't say anything. And then other people who've experienced it feel like they are the only one. And so I am so grateful that you're here to kind of open up our eyes and say, here's what can happen, and here's what we can do about it. You don't have to stay stuck in shame. So is it okay if we start? Did you have a personal experience with abuse?
Oh, yes, sadly enough. When I was about 9 years old, my father came into my bed, and I don't know how graphic I can be here about what happened, but I'm just going to say it. And you can beep if you want. But I was literally face beat for the next 3 years in my bed late at night, and it caused severe dissociation and many, many, many problems for me. And I had occluded memory. I just had to block it out. And every time I'd hear his footsteps on the stairs coming to my bedroom, I would just see myself going out the window. I would just leave my body and I was gone. That's how I survived it. And it was actually during my first EMDR training. In the very first session, we wanted us to practice on something small, so we didn't open up a can of worms. And I chose to work on my fear of tall buildings. I'd look up at a tall building and just about pass out. And we now know that phobias are often a cover for trauma. And so we started the EMDR, and about 30 seconds later, my head went back, a cock went down my throat, and I was completely gone. It was extreme. That was the beginning of the memories coming back and so forth. And I was 32, 33 at the time, something like that. So I'm glad it came back. It made sense of a lot of things that had been going on in my life. I had all the symptoms of having been sexually abused, but there was no memories to connect to that. So yes, so I have a very personal experience with this, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of men over the years doing this. We know so much more now, and there's growing evidence that boys are actually more often sexually abused than girls.
Really?
Because girls are protected. Boys are sent out into the world and expected to take care of themselves. They're little men. They're not little boys. The moment they pop out, they're told they're supposed to take care of their mother. They're not allowed to be children. They're not allowed to be defenseless. And so boys who don't have particularly close relationship with their father particularly often are seduced by other men who are giving them the attention that they want, and then they pay a high price for that. And boys being sexually abused by girls, babysitters, school teachers, female, it's incredibly common. And one of the classic symptoms is sexual compulsivity. And so if we have all this stuff about sexual addiction, which is nonsense. People who are sexually compulsive are acting out the trauma of their sexual abuse, their sexual history. And so because we find that once you resolve the trauma of the original sexual abuse, all of a sudden the compulsivity just goes away. And so we have such an epidemic of men being sexually compulsive. And what we're looking at is a bunch of victims of sexual abuse that have never acknowledged or treated. And so many of them think they were lucky. And that's how particularly if it's with a girl, a boy is considered lucky that he's had this initiation by a female. And so they're not allowed to be victims. To be a victim and a male is to not be male anymore.
Wow. Okay. You've already given so many things to think about and just open our eyes to the reality of this problem and also how common it is. And that's disturbing. And it's also disturbing to realize that we can repress memories and not even be aware that we have been abused. And I think many people who have not experienced that don't understand that this is a survival mechanism so that we can continue to function and we don't just explode.
Right. Otherwise, you just collapse and die.
Absolutely.
Literally. So.
Absolutely. And I'm so sorry that it was your father, because that messes up with even more than if it were a stranger or someone that you didn't have constant.
See, that's the other fallacy that we have, is that we worry about stranger abduction, but the vast majority of sexual abuse to boys and girls happens within the circle of people they know. Their teachers, their coaches, their relatives, their siblings, their parents. It's the people they're ministers. They're supposed to be the people that you can trust. But I tell you, it's this puritanical culture that we live in, particularly here in the United States. We've never gotten past the Puritans. And so we have this whole phobia around sex in general, and it's just weird. And so and these people who don't want sex education for children, sex education helps protect them. It's about giving them an understanding of what's going on in them, what's going on with the people around them, so that they have a way of identifying what's happened. Otherwise, we're just keeping them naive and sending them out to the slaughter because they don't know that what's going on is wrong or that they should do something about it if they can. I tell somebody that this happened to them. So good sex education, age appropriate, telling them what sex is and what isn't and how it works, is essential to protecting children from being sexually abused. And if I can say one other thing.
Yes, absolutely.
If there's a sudden dramatic change in personality in a child, something happened. Find out what happened. It doesn't just magically happen that they suddenly have a U-turn in their characterological structure of their personality, and they go from being outgoing to silent or not wanting to do anything. Something has occurred. It is the parents' responsibility, or the caretakers, to find out what that was, address it, and get the child the help that they need. Because the parent doing that tells the child that the parent cares, loves, and is willing to go to whatever level of necessary to protect them. And otherwise, they're just on their own because they're so ashamed of what happened to them, because the child absorbs the shame of the perpetrator. They just download it because they don't know this is shameful. So they're absorbing what's going on. And so if the parent sees something really dramatically different in the child, something is going on. It may not be sexual abuse. It may not be physical trauma. They might have been shamed, humiliated in a really bad situation somewhere, but that needs to be addressed because the child is swallowing it in is who they are. It's the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is feeling bad about something you did or thought about doing or didn't do. Shame is being feeling bad about who you are.
Right. And as you're talking, I'm having a hard time not crying here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sometimes there isn't a change in the child's behavior.
True.
Because when my daughter was raped by her uncle, and I did not know until 20 years later, because her memory, she repressed it. It was too awful, too different from anything else that she'd experienced.
Yes.
She couldn't handle it.
Right.
And it hurts. And it hurts as a parent that I wasn't successful in protecting her.
Yes. And there's nothing you could do about it because the people you trusted most violated your trust and your daughter's trust.
I trusted a wrong person.
Yes. And unfortunately, pedophiles look like everybody else.
They do. They do. They look like everybody else.
They do. And they don't have a label on their forehead that says, I'm a pedophile, but protect your child.
No.
And it's unfortunate. And so we have to, okay, if I can alter this a little bit. Because one of the things I teach is about energetic boundaries. And so it's so important to learn how to read these unconscious messages that we get from collecting the energy in the environment around us. That's called interoception, is the clinical term. And so by learning how to tune into that, you pick up more of what's going on in the environment. You'll feel the change in the daughter. You'll feel the weirdness, energy around the uncle. I mean, I'm not trying to blame you in any way. I'm just saying this is another level of education that we're not giving people about how to read the environments that we encounter. And the people that we encounter. Because they're actually giving us all this information, but we don't have any education about how to do that. And that's why I created my boundaries course, was to help teach people to do that so that they could gather this information and do something with it.
All right. Well, I would love to hear some of these steps because you have, there's the 7 steps to powerful.
Yeah, that's the program.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we have a preview?
Sure. The ugly secret of boundaries is that everything we know about boundaries we learned in childhood from our families. We think that that's what boundaries are, however our family told us. So if they didn't have any boundaries, guess what? We're not going to have any boundaries either. And so step 1 is really taking you back to your childhood and looking at what you learned about boundaries. Step 2 is just a very academic description of the 15 major boundaries and what they are. An example is of cultural boundaries. How one culture says hello is very different necessarily than another culture, how they say hello. And so that's a boundary. Step 3 is the introduction to energetic boundaries and how to read this, to acknowledge what this information is. We're all atoms, we're made up of atoms. Everything in the world is made up of the same energy. You just take different forms and we recognize it. And so once we learn that everything's energy, that changes your whole perception of how the world interacts and works. And so it's the introduction to the energetic boundaries. Step 4 is a deep dive into guilt and shame. Because so much of what drives us in the world is guilt and shame that has not been processed or dealt with. And so by dealing with that, it changes your whole experience of being in the world and consequently have a better picture of what's going on around you. Step 5 is the advanced energetic boundaries. And then step 6 is getting into intuition and much more information about exteroception and all these different abilities. And I give a lot of skills for cleaning up relationships. And then step 7 is an integration of all of it into the grand finale.
That sounds like a very valuable course.
People tell me it changes their lives because it tells you a lot of things that you never got told.
Right. And when you talk about the very first step, whatever we grew up with is normal. that is our baseline.
Yes.
Whether
Yes.
it's good, bad, or ugly, that
Yes.
is our baseline. And unless we become aware and learn something different, we will do the same thing and
And we'll
fall
attract the
back
same
into pattern.
people.
Yes, we
If
will.
you're the way your parents expressed love to you was to beat you or to humiliate you or shame you in some way, that's what you think love is. And so you go out into the world looking for that because that's what you're trained to expect and know. You
Wow.
marry it, you have it in your relationships, your friends, you simply attract what you know. We recreate our family.
You know, for a lot of people who are listening, I wonder if there are any aha moments of, oh, that's why I am attracted to this person. That's why this particular situation keeps showing up. That's why my relationships look like this and feel like this, because we are recreating our childhood experience.
Yes. I call it the dance of intimacy. And we learn this dance from our family, and then we go out, and that's why we marry our parents, or at least one of them, because we go out and like, oh, it just feels so natural. This just feels like it fits. It's because you found one of your parents. My statement to that is we all marry our parents, just find a healthier version.
And I also think that the degree of healing that you have already experienced then will change who you are attracted to and who is attracted to you. So if
Absolutely.
the sooner that we're able to become aware and begin this healing process, the sooner we can stop whatever cycles. And especially if you're talking about a situation where I grew up in abuse, I grew up with whatever, and that is what I'm expecting. But if I can get some help soon enough and then make those internal changes in my mind, my expectations, then I don't have to choose a spouse who is going to beat me and who yells. We can create something new and something
Yes.
different. And I think that's important for people to recognize as well. We are not doomed to repeat it. It's just the default setting.
Yes. And you have to heal those childhood wounds. Nobody gets through childhood unscathed.
Right.
Nobody.
And I even like to say there's trauma with a capital T, like you experienced.
Yes.
And there's
Big T and small
trauma,
T trauma.
yeah, with where it's just, if you were to tell someone this is what happened, it wouldn't be, oh, that's terrible. It would be so. But in my mind, it was a big deal. It was something that influenced me and affected me the way that I think. So those people who are listening, this is not only for those who have been sexually abused. This is for people who are humans who were raised by humans.
Yes, we're formed by our experiences. And our family is the incubator of which most of that happens. And so it just, as you said before, becomes normal. But nobody, as I said, nobody gets through childhood unscathed, and our parents aren't perfect. They make mistakes, sometimes on purpose and sometimes not. Uh, and you have to address and heal those. I tell this story, but it sort of was I have a twin sister, and at the end of high school, we were graduation, and she was crying, and I said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "Because this is over." And I said, "Hallelujah! I'm out of here." It was a pretty awful childhood on many, many, many levels. So,
Oh, sorry. Did your sister have an awful childhood as well, or were you singled out?
I think all three of us, I have an older brother as well, had pretty horrendous childhoods. But I grew up essentially in a cult organized around my mother's delusion of being ruler of the world. We were isolated from the family, from the world. We weren't allowed to have friends. We often lived in remote places where we had no neighbors. And so it was just a very closed unit. And the violence and the abuse of my father had a terrible temper. I saw many animals beaten to death and shot and killed, and he got mad at them. And yeah, this was not a fun childhood. And then the delusions around my mother and the isolation and then the dissociation from the actual abuse. And so this was just a nightmare. And so if I could speak to that briefly, I don't see myself as a victim because living as a victim is a dead end. There's no happy ending. We've all been victimized. Our task is to heal that and take back our power and stop giving it away to those people who hurt us. Because as long as we go around the world going, he hurt me and I'm still hurting because he hurt me, we're giving away our power to them. We're staying stuck in that reality. You have to go through the pain. You have to feel it. You have to express it and feel it, be done with it, but then take back your power. I was enraged at my father for years, and I didn't even know why, because the memory was occluded. My body knew what had happened to me. And so, but I had to take back all of my power from him and give him no power to make me feel bad about who I was or what had happened to me. And that freed me to be alive and freed me to be able to talk about this. And I had gynecomastia, which is men with female-like breast. I had adolescent onset, and I developed this skinny little boy with breast. I've been in a few documentaries when BBC came over and did documentaries on me on gynecomastia. And we were in the middle of one of them, and they stopped the whole thing. And the director turned to me and said, "You're talking about this like it's no big deal, and all these other guys are falling apart and ready to kill themselves." And I said, "Well, you have to understand that in my life, this didn't actually end up in the top 5 of the traumas." So I said, so this is, it doesn't define who I am. It was a real pain. I mean, nothing like being in 7th grade and the boys all grabbing your chest and, you know, of course, ending up in the skins game in basketball and the girls offering their bras. And so it was not particularly fun, but compared to everything else I went through, it was on such a minor scale. So
What did you do for that? Did you have to have surgery or did it go away by itself? Or
no, I had two breast reductions. I had 2 surgeries. Yeah. First one, that's why actually the reason that I got so well known was that after my first surgery, and I got it literally almost on the last day of graduate school, I got notice that my surgery was approved and I had the surgery. And then so when I started my practice and I built my website, I put the section on there about the gynecomastia because there was virtually nothing on the web about it. It blew up. And eventually I created a whole website called gynecomastia.org. It was getting 100,000 visitors a month. But so many boys and men are walking around with this, and it's a liver issue is the problem. It's this, see, at the onset of the liver processes testosterone in the body, the hormones. And so at the onset of adolescence, when the boy suddenly gets a surge of testosterone in the body, if the liver isn't up to processing that testosterone, it gets converted to estrogen. And if they have a predisposition to growing breast, as we know, not all women have breast, and if you have a predisposition for that, and my father had it as well, then you're going to likely grow secondary female characteristics, and the breast being the obvious one. And so, and at some point, the liver balances out, they stop growing, and then it comes back in 30% after first surgeries. So it comes back again for some guys, and I happen to be one of the lucky ones that got it twice. So, so that came in. A TV show from Australia came in and filmed that. I have some funny stories about that. But
really?
Well, yeah, like I was.
They filmed your surgery?
Yeah, they filmed my surgery. They came into the TV show on it, and gynecomastia, I've been in newspapers and magazines around the world and interviews, and so all from the gynecomastia. So I'm really comfortable being on camera.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the story. It was really, I love this story. I always giggle every time I think of it. I'm standing here in the operating room. It's full of reporters and cameras and producers. There must have been a dozen people all standing there. Me stark naked here in front of them because the nurse is covering me from betadine from my neck down to my knees. And she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have to move your genitals." And I say, "Oh, honey, you're not the first one to grab those." And the whole room just completely dissolves into laughter because they were much more tense about this than I was.
Wow. Okay, now I want to see your documentaries. That sounds crazy.
There are 2 documentaries. They're all, I think all of them are on my merleyost.com website.
Okay.
I've done a lot of press in my life. So they always say, you're so comfortable on camera. I said, it's where I belong.
Apparently it is. And there's a reason for it, because you being up there confidently, calmly talking about these things where everybody else in the room is just panicking and feeling embarrassed and wanting to cover their eyes. It's like, you guys, this is okay.
It's just part of life. You can make it your life, or you can just say, yeah, this happened. Okay, next. So,
Yeah. And moving on to next. Wow.
yeah.
Thank you.
As a Buddhist, I believe that I chose this path in this lifetime so that I would become the healer that I was become. And so by healing my past and going through all of that, I could help all of these other people heal their journey. So in a certain sense, I'm grateful. I don't feel like a victim. Does that excuse their behavior? No. I held them fully responsible for their actions, which they were unwilling to ever address or deal with. But that was their choice. That was their karma, their free will to do what they did. I chose to take this path, and I got what I needed to get from it. And for that, I'm grateful.
Oh, man, Merle, I just want to stand up and cheer. The message that you share is exactly the message that I want to share with the whole world. We don't have to be victims. We don't even have to be survivors. We can
No,
be
I don't like the word.
champions of our own
Yes.
story as we overcome our challenges,
I
even
agree.
if they're horrific.
I know something about that, but yes.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I don't like the word survivor because it's identifying yourself by your victimization.
No,
And I just think it's a really bad idea.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, anyone, please, who is listening, if you feel like you're a victim, if you have been victimized, let's heal. We invite you to heal. And you need to know that it is absolutely possible, because that matters. If we don't think something is going to work, then we're not even going to take the first step. So we need to know. I mean, I'm looking at you and having this conversation, and you look happy, healthy, and you're totally fine. And that is amazing. And so if you can do that, then other people can do it as well. So
Absolutely. The journey is possible. But you have to find someone who can hold you. And unfortunately, not all therapists are created equal.
no, they are not.
And not all therapists have dealt with their own trauma and have their own motivations for being a therapist. So in my last book, Facing the Truth of Your Life, I have a whole chapter on choosing a therapist. And one of the key questions is, how much work have you done on yourself and how has it changed your life? And if they won't answer the question, find somebody else.
Will you repeat that? That's worth repeating.
How much work have you done on yourself to heal? And how has it changed your life?
Ooh, that's excellent. Because if they haven't fixed themselves, they are
Move
not
on.
ready to help
Yeah,
someone
move on.
else.
Because they can't help you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's beautiful. I was going to ask you a little bit about that, like even just the title of the book, Facing the Truth of Your Life. It sounds kind of ominous.
well, it's challenging. It's about taking a hard look at your life. And I challenge a lot of core belief systems that I don't believe in forgiveness. I think that forgiveness means offering absolution. I did not offer my father absolution. I gave him back the responsibility for his actions, and I took care of myself because it's his job to make amends, to apologize for what he did, to take responsibility for what he did. And my letting him off the hook does not help him in his growth.
Absolutely. So, by your definition of forgiveness equaling absolution, I can understand that. My definition of forgiveness is that it's not absolution, it is letting go. So, for me, forgiveness, see, because we're using that same word in different ways.
Right, we have the same meaning.
But the meaning is
of the letting
precisely the
go.
same.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that forgiveness, or this process of healing, of letting go, of separating, this is your problem, and this is the part that I have to deal with, is very important. And that it can look different for different people. Some people think
Absolutely.
that it means, well, that means that I have to say, oh, well, that's okay. It's not okay.
Exactly.
We never have to say that it's okay. We don't have to choose to continue to associate with this person. We can follow all of the legal options to be able to help this person have accountability. All of those things are absolutely okay. And it's still okay with the letting go process and separating. So it doesn't mean we never give someone just that blank get out of jail free card.
Free pass.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, it's all right. I'm okay. So we're all good. So no. That's because that enables victims, or I'm sorry, perpetrators to do it again.
And the reason I don't like the word forgiveness is because it gets so badly abused.
Oh, okay.
and from a Christian perspective, it's about just letting it all go as if it doesn't matter, and that they're free to go on with whatever. But I agree with you, and I know people who use forgiveness the same way that you do, but I don't think that's the majority. I mean, it's like we see somebody whose child was just shot or killed, and they come out on TV and say, "Well, I forgive them." Forgiveness, by your definition, is a process.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go through to let go of all that anger, to express all of that pain and move through it so that you're free of that. And that can't be done in 10 minutes. That's a process.
Right. So I guess when we use certain words that everyone uses, but different people understand differently, it's important to kind of clarify what we mean. Yes. So if you get on the news and say, I forgive you, does not mean that it's okay. It's not okay. But that also doesn't mean that I can't be okay after I go through this process.
So. After you go through the process, absolutely, but you have to go through the process. That by whatever word you use, process is required.
Absolutely. And I like that you have mentioned multiple times that it is a process. I believe that healing is not like flipping on a light switch where it's instantaneous. It's more like a sunrise, where it's the change from moment to moment might be gradual, but it does come, and it's beautiful and it's worth it. But it is a process. That there's no magic pill, there's no magic switch. There just isn't.
EMDR is probably the closest thing to a magic pill that I know. I mean, I've helped so many people clear rapes and abuse and so forth in a single session. It just doesn't bother them anymore. And that's magical. And so it was a real paradigm change in terms of psychotherapy. But they still have to go through the pain of that experience with me in doing the work. But it's generally very quick and it's incredibly effective. But you have to be on some level willing to let it go. As you know, too many people become identified by their victimization, and that becomes their whole identity. And to let that go means to let go of who they think they are. And so that's a tough nut to crack.
And that goes back to the word survivor, that could be used as, okay, this is my identity. I am the person who went through this. And when you really heal, it's like, it happened. And now my life is so full and so rich of so many wonderful things that's just a little piece of it. I can use that to be able to help other people, but that's not who I am. That's not who I am.
It helped form who I am. I mean, but it doesn't define who I am by any stretch of the imaginations.
No, of course not. Oh, this has been amazing and heart-wrenching. Merle, is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today? Shame
is a wasted emotion. And too many of us live with shame our whole lives over something big or something small. And especially when we were young and we didn't have any power to make choices. And because children blame themselves for everything that's going on around them. If mom and dad dropped you off at the library at age of 4 or 5 or something, didn't come back to get you on time, and you're standing there waiting, the child believes it's their fault. They blame themselves. There's something wrong with me that my parents didn't come back. And they say, well, where the hell are they? And so we start taking in shame very early on. So it's really important to do the digging and to get that stuff out of there, because it forms and shapes how you see the world and how you present yourself in the world and what you think you deserve. And so I understand not everybody can afford psychotherapy or the years and years and years. I think I did 17 years of it. But there are ways, and there are books like mine and others out there who talk about this that can be profoundly healing. I've had so many men read my book and tell me it just stopped their sexual compulsivity because they really understood themselves on a much deeper level and started to heal. So, and mine's not the only book in the world that does that, but do your homework, go out there and talk to other people and find out their stories and their healing journey and see what worked for them. You're not alone. We're all having to heal. Nobody gets through this unscathed.
No. And thank you. I think this conversation is so important to help other people become aware. And then from listening, and they can say, oh, and I need Merle's book. Oh, and here are some resources that can help me to heal. So I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really am grateful to be here, and I'm grateful that I can help educate people about this. It's so important.
Yes, it is. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Jeannie McAkilvaney. She said, "You can recognize survivors of abuse by their courage. When silence is so very inviting, they step forward and share their truth so others know they aren't alone." To any of our listeners, male or female, who have experienced sexual abuse, please know that you're not alone and that there's hope for healing. See you next time on Linda's Corner.
Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the Free Stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.
Well, it's truly been an honor to visit with you today and to meet you. I've learned a lot, so I appreciate
Thank you. Yeah, I have a really good time. And I have no shame about who I am or what's happened to me. And
Right.
so that's the difference. That's what changes the whole game. So
And that's huge, because that's what we want for everybody. Is
yes.
This is not shameful. This is not anything about you. It just is.